I'm trying to make it in the world that isn't fair, and nothing's ever going my way under the curse of despair. I tried to reach it first, but I fail, and no one's ever there. When the pain starts to hurt, the who to tell. Uncomfortable, can't seem to make it out of my position. I'm here all the time, can't seem to break repetition. You don't get recognition for the good, fuck up your reputation for the hood. When you're missing in the woods, wish I could get back right everything that went wrong. So when I get put on, I'ma sing it in the song. Give y'all something to relate to, have you thankful for the knowledge. Not saying I make it right, don't be praying for a promise. Just say that life's a bitch, so I'm a cover. So greedy and stingy, like I'ma never get another one. She's starving, hungry, with loads of money, I'ma suffer for the stress. We wrote the test and let it burn like Usher. Fathom this.
My life is just a journey on the move. What's up? It's Dangerous Thoughts. I'm your host, Manu Tereme. Welcome to the wild and weird show called Dangerous Thoughts. Dangerous Thoughts is a show where we dig down deep into the rabbit hole. We talk about things that people are uncomfortable talking about on the internet. We think things that you're not supposed to think. We say things that you're not supposed to say. We are true human beings that express ourselves. Join us. Join the DT family. Like us, subscribe us, hit the button. Keep watching the show. Welcome to the show, all of our normal crew, Katie and Dave, and all our wonderful people. This is my co-host, sitting off to my right here. It's my finger.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry. That's my turn, right? That's my cue.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm Tyson Strasberg.
That's
How are you
Tyson.
doing?
Did your voice just squeak?
My voice just.
It went up really high.
Okay. I you go through puberty at 14, 15, and I think I'm getting ready to go through menopause, and I think that's the second menopause, and the voice starts squeaking.
I'm Strasberg. I'm dangerous.
I was excited to get hair in places. Now I'm going to lose hair in places, but that's fine. It's
Well,
just another part of life.
I have to tell you, I love this show, mostly because I love all the people on it. I love you, Tyson, but I also love what we attack. We attack, not attack. I hate that word, but the things that we discuss over the internet. There are so many people in this society now with social media that are completely and totally afraid to talk about anything that matters. You watch CNN, you watch Fox News, you watch all the bullshit that they're trying to pump into our heads. And I spent 30 years in Hollywood, so I know that Hollywood is trying to program us. That's why they call it programming when you watch the TV. It's just it's a wonderful thing to be a part of a show where we can talk about anything we want to talk about, and we'll see how long it takes to get us canceled. I'm surprised we're still here. It's a good thing. But tonight is very exciting to me because we have a special special guest named Pat O'Connell. She's a communications consultant for a high-tech corporations in fields as varied as nuclear power, aerospace, and antibody library solutions. Any idea what that is? Antibody library solutions?
That I don't know, but I know with all those titles.
You think that's a typo? Antibody library solution?
Oh, antibody library solution?
That must be a typo, right?
Sounds biological, but
I don't know. Super smart, though. Super smart, this woman. She's also a researcher, a novelist, a nonfiction author, and she has eclectic interests from science and medicine to history and psychology to metaphysics and the paranormal. She helps individual clients manifest their own book publication dreams, and through it all, she remains an activist for freedom, which is why she's on this show, because this show is all about freedom of thought and freedom of individuality and our own beliefs on, what reality actually is.
I have an actual documented scholastic achievement that I bet she doesn't have in her repertoire. I have a GED.
I was just thinking her hobbies make us look stupid. Her hobbies.
Yeah, her hobbies. That's dumb.
I have a GED.
I'm drinking grape juice from a jar. I bet she's never done that.
Have those grape juice grown up to be wine yet, or
You're drinking
just
beer,
grape juice? Just no. This is yes.
Oh, yes, I knew it. I knew it. Okay, so here's the interesting thing about Pat. Pat has spent the last few years investigating an incredible event that happened in Texas to this man named Clay Wheeler. It's a true story with a twist so shocking, you never see it coming. For 3 years, Texas aircraft repair shop owner Clay Wheeler witnessed an array of paranormal phenomena in Sparks County Airport that make the events of Utah's Skinwalker Ranch pale by comparison, including UFOs, alien poltergeists, demonic possession, and plain old murder. Whoa, plain old murder. Just old murder. Well, we do it a lot. Murder, it's a lot more common than you think. I've been watching a lot of shows lately, and people kill each other all the time. We just don't really, they hide it from us. It's like just death in the hospital, when you get old and people pass away, or young and people pass away. 100 years ago, when people passed away, we would take their bodies, we would bury them in our backyards. People saw death much more often. Now, there's plenty of human beings that have gone throughout their entire life without seeing somebody die or seeing a dead body. I find that really strange that we hide so much from that. I think we should do something about that. It's a completely different endeavor. I don't know.
Normalize death.
Well, we should normalize death. Death is a part of life. I mean,
yes, it is.
Plugged into these things we call, human bodies that I think are more of like a virtual soul system. I don't believe that I think I'm something much more than that. I've died on multiple occasions. I've gotten very close to death on multiple occasions, and I've had some very, very weird, very beautiful experiences from those close deaths. I've at least died close to 10 times in this life. And there's this thing that's tethered to you, and there's this spirit that's tethered to you. I'm sure of it. I'm 100% sure of it. And those atheists out there that... Atlas, are you an atheist? What are you doing? What is this kid doing on my show? What is this doing on my show?
Oh, my goodness.
But I want to bring on Pat O'Connell because I want to hear his story, and I'm wasting all this time, 12 minutes already. Let's bring on Pat. Let's hear Pat's story. Hi, Pat. How are you? You can unmute your mic.
I was getting there. Yeah. Hi, guys.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm really excited to visit with you guys and share some of the weird stuff that I wrote about.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Okay, the antibody libraries.
Yeah. Tell us about antibody library.
I did. That's not a typo. I didn't make it up. One of my clients makes antibodies like for evil big pharma to make these like monoclonal antibody type products that they give to people to suppress their immune system. And
and you have a whole library of those.
They make libraries of them, and then they sell these libraries to companies that are trying to make products.
I dig it. So it's not like you send these antibodies to Mark Twain.
I don't make
all
them.
Books in my library. That's what was confusing me.
No.
I was like, antibody libraries. How do you? What? All right, I get it now. See how dumb we are? I told you.
Yeah, they make a bunch.
They weren't real smart.
Right.
Ever since he had his Borg implants removed,
everything's gone sideways.
I know. Yeah. I know. My gosh, you would have thought that 7 of 9 would have given you something.
Well, she did. She tried, and then they ripped all my implants out, and that was that. So your hobbies are nuclear physics.
No,
I lost all.
no, that's not a hobby. I mean, I'm interested in that, but
Yeah.
I developed training for nuclear reactor operators. But you know, it's funny. People think that requires a lot of intelligence, but it's really common sense. It's like airplane pilots. You know, they have all those instruments, but they rarely use all of them at once. In fact, some of them they never use unless it's an emergency. So they use like 5 instruments. It's kind of like that in nuclear power. It's a lot of pushing buttons and turning switches and looking at what the gauge says, and is it, you know, too high or too low, or is a light bulb out, you know, that's supposed to tell you whether something's working or not.
Do you train people in nuclear power facilities?
I have done that, yes.
Wow. What facilities can you say?
Comanche Peak.
Where's
here
that?
In Texas. It's here in Texas. Yeah.
Okay. And how did you find yourself in that line of work?
Well, I had just had a baby and getting a divorce, and I was looking for a job, and I had training background, and I do a kind of training that's called performance-based or criterion referenced. So it's really designed for success. So it's like, you know, what does it look like when it's done right? So we show the person. It's designed so that everybody who has the prerequisite skills and knowledge can get it well. It's not like normal education where we expect some people to really excel and some people to totally fail and the majority to be somewhere in the middle. Performance-based training is designed for success. And
speaking of prerequisites for nuclear power, what are those?
Well, it depends. It depends on the task. No, it's task based. So one of the first tasks I did was shut down the plant from the hot shutdown panel, because I like to take the hard ones first and get them out of the way. And that was basically operating the entire plant from a remote shutdown panel in case the control room is on fire, or you know, a asteroid just hit it and you have to shut down the
I've seen Homer Simpson do that once, so you know what happens. Right. And I'll
you grab your donuts and you run to the hot shutdown panel.
I have to believe there's been huge innovations since Chernobyl, and probably even more innovation since Fukusaki. Was that the Japanese
Fukushima one? Jesus.
Fukushima. I'm not GED. All right, GED. That's but what I do is I'm a labor management partnership trainer, so I also train people Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. You're familiar with that, and you've got the process map, which you probably deal heavily in process maps. You know, this is how this works. Here's the happy path. Here's what happens when we stray from that happy path. So I'm following you, but I'm sorry, Manu. Go ahead.
Okay, so you've trained people in nuclear power plants.
Yes.
You actually do. I mean, I'm hoping that a job like that in a country like this, you need to be, you know, a certain level of high intelligence for. And if not, oh boy. Anyway, Pat O'Connell. So Pat has been working on this story that is fascinating to me. I read you the little blurb. She met this man named Clay Wheeler, and give us a little background on how you met this man and how you decided to write this book.
So my brother Jim O'Connell was an abductee. He believed that he had been abducted since he was a little kid.
Stop. I want to go back even farther. How did you, and this is probably the same answer, how did you get interested in the topic of UAPs, UFOs?
Gosh, I've been interested as far as I can remember, you know, as long as I can remember. Now, Jim reminded me about the 1965 Northeast blackout. And that we were in Connecticut. We were living in Connecticut in a 270-year-old house at the time. And one of our friends, one of my older brother's friends came over. We had several friends come over, and we listened to the transistor radio and played games and roast marshmallows over the fireplace and all that. But one of the friends said he had seen a UFO on his way over to our house during this blackout. And so that it goes back at least that far. And, my parents were interested in paranormal. We watched, it was a really hokey show with Darren McGavin, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was about creatures and ghosts and Night Stalker. And
well, they tried to make it hokey back then. That was part of a whole CIA program. If you don't know, they tried to make everything hokey that dealt with those subjects to convince people to stop talking about them, or if they did talk about them, they would be.
That's right.
They would be harassed.
They'd be ridiculed.
Called crazy.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So since
but I learned
into this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
but,
so how
I'm the only one. Say again.
Go ahead. Finish. Go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
I'm the only one in my family who has of my siblings who has not seen a UFO. So I don't know whether I'm not tuned into them.
No, I've seen UFOs.
I know. I wish I had. I've invited them down. I've spent the night on the airport on the runway saying, "Come on down."
Tune in. I swear I saw a pair of aliens. A pair. I sure did.
Where?
They were in the back of a Border Patrol car. But extraterrestrials I've never seen, and I've been wanting to see. That's something I have seen.
Me too.
No, I'm kind of a comedian, but I have really seen UFOs, like real UFOs that I can't explain. But
you have
never seen an extraterrestrial. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have seen. That's not a joke. UFOs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, how did you meet Clay Wheeler and this idea that you've spent the last few years writing this book on?
So, going back to my brother Jim. When he finally acknowledged that he wasn't just having these really weird dreams, that he was actually being abducted by aliens, he started developing a TV reality show, interviewing people from all over the world that he had met who had these experiences. And his show was, it was not about the vehicles. He said there's so many shows about UFOs, about the vehicles, but there are no shows about the abductees. And he wanted to acknowledge and recognize the difficulty of and some of the other aspects of the abduction experience, because whether or not it's objectively real, whether it's psychological malfunction or a real thing that's happening, it affects people's lives very dramatically. And so he wanted to give respect to these people and tell their stories. And so that's the story, that's the show he was developing. And he called me to say that he had this one guy this one experiencer who had so many weird things happen. It wasn't just, I believe I was abducted one night. No, it was like aliens and demons and angels and poltergeists and ghosts and possession and you name it. He said, I can't possibly cover this guy's story in an hour episode of a show. Even if I did like a 3-episode arc, I still couldn't cover it all. Would you be interested? Since my brother was in Connecticut, I'm here in Texas. He said, would you want to go interview this guy, vet him first of all, see if he's kind of off.
See if he's nuts, or see if he's got credibility.
Right. And if you're interested, then you could interview him and potentially write a book or books or do a screenplay or all of the above or whatever. So that's how that started.
Okay. And this was in what year? 2015?
This was in 2015. Yeah.
Okay, so the first time you met Clay and you sat down with him, what did you think?
Well, my husband and I had been corresponding and talking to Clay on the phone for several months before we went to the airport and met Clay to see where all this stuff had happened and to interview him. And I got him on camera and all that kind of stuff. And so he seemed, Stuart and I, of course, you opened up with, the fact that I'm an activist. Well, we've seen in activist circles that when somebody who feels like they know something that is being suppressed, when they meet somebody who gets it, they just vomit information. They just talk and talk and talk because we call it the fire hose effect. So we just let them run because, it's so rare that they find somebody who will listen, who won't call them crazy. And so it's a relief to start making these connections. So that was kind of what we experienced with him on our first day, or the first part of the first day. And it was raining. We were really hoping, because he guaranteed, if we go out to the airport, you will see a UFO. And it was raining. We couldn't be outside. We couldn't see anything. It kind of eased up toward the second half of the day. So we did go out to the airport. But you asked me what I thought of him. I could see that he was kind of nervous. I think he might have been maybe a little suspicious of me, wondering, am I going to make a fool of him? Am I going to make fun of him or whatever? And no, I took him very seriously. He had sent me, before we even came down there, he had sent me a bunch of his pictures, his photos. He had a couple of short video clips of things. One was of something he called the energy craft. And it was like this ball of light that comes toward the camera. And you can see that that it's a physical thing that has its own light, because you can see it lighting up the surface of a vehicle that's outside. And anyway, so he had sent a bunch of stuff. And when I heard initially that he had all this evidence, I was so excited, because I want to believe. I'm like Mulder, I want to believe. I want to see something that I can say, no matter what anybody says to me, I can say, I know this for a fact. I don't care what you say. I know this for a fact.
That wasn't ball lightning. That was a UFO.
Exactly. And I've actually seen ball lightning once in my life.
Me too.
So I know that's a real thing. Yeah. He showed me all his evidence, and I was kind of disappointed with it, because being a skeptic, being a real skeptic, the kind that, is open to possibilities, but you're going to have to sell it. You're going to have to sell it. You're going to have to give me good evidence. So there were a lot of things. I could see camera shake, and this blurs or overexposed or whatever. But his stories were incredible. And when I talked to him, I could feel that he believed what happened. And so this kind of went back to what my brother's purpose was for his show, which is to give a platform and respect to these abductees or these experiencers, that what they experienced was real to them, whether it was measurable or objectively real. It doesn't matter. It was real to them. So I got to that point with him. And so I believed in a lot of cases he misunderstood some things. He had pictures of what he called rods. And I don't know if you guys have heard of them, rods or skyfish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like a long worm in the sky, flying through the sky with a bunch of multiple wings on it. Well, it turns out that it's actually a moth or whatever flying bug in the night.
Well, the flying bug thing yeah.
Right. And the typical camera shutter speed isn't fast enough to freeze that bug in mid-flight. So it really gets a multiple exposure. So it gets multiple flaps of the wings. And so when I explained that to Clay, and I even told him, there's this great National Geographic, I think, documentary where they showed they had a high-speed camera and a regular camera and a high-speed timer, and you could see it. And so he was kind of like withdrawn, when I told him that, and he was like, well, yeah, okay. And I said, you have to understand, I think you are the real deal. I think you had some incredible experiences and saw some incredible things. I want people to believe you. And to do that, I want to eliminate,
You've got to be able to at least tell me that I understand that's a moth.
Right. And so I said, I want us to debunk the things that people can easily debunk, so that whatever's left is really credible stuff.
So what was left? Tell me some of the things that blew your mind about this guy and his experiences.
Well, I mean, there were multiple ships that came out, that were out there, that either came down or went up and dove into the ground. There was an oblong craft. He called it the eyeglass case craft. That the first time he saw it, he was actually with some of his crew. Okay, he was an aircraft repair technician. That's why he was living and working at this airport. So he was repairing airplanes. And so he had employees, and one night this craft came over and he said, oh, look, you can take the laser and you can shoot it at these lights that are moving erratically in the sky, and they'll jump away from it. Watch. So he does this, and sure enough, the light jumps away. Well, this light zoomed in, and it was this oblong craft. And he's shown the laser on it again, and it zoomed in closer. And then eventually it was like overhead. And he started to feel, he called it the headache beam. He said it felt like somebody had poured warm water in through my head, and it was seeping down through my body. And he said, and then I got the worst headache I've ever gotten in my life. That was the first time he saw that craft. The second time he saw that craft, it was hovering between the hangar and the little terminal building. And it was so low, he could reach up, and he touched the bottom of it with his hand. And he said, I'm like, oh my God, you touched it? What did it feel like? He said, it felt like wet leather. He said, I was looking at it and thinking, is it metallic? But it had sort of this bumpy texture. So I'm thinking, is it like ceramic or something, like an eggshell? But he said what it felt like was wet leather. And right about that time, the thing sprayed him with something, and he started burning. And he had one employee was there with him, and his skin started burning. So the employee just runs him into the hangar to this emergency shower they had in there, and starts ripping off his clothes and hosing him off, and ended up taking him to the hospital. And the doctors were debating over whether it was a chemical burn. He had like 2nd and 3rd degree burns in some places, and they had to do this really painful debridement kind of process. So apparently the doctors were debating over whether it was chemical burns or radiation burns. And I'm like, okay. And I've been processing this for probably since then. What does that mean? And I was talking to somebody about Bob Lazar, who's the guy that worked at S4 outside of Area 51, supposedly back engineering UFOs that we had captured. And he talked about this element 115. And I'm thinking, well, what if they're powered with some kind of element that has radiation? So maybe the stuff that they sprayed him with was chemical, but he was also exposed to radiation. So, I don't know what this is. And that's one of the things that I still want to track down. I still want to talk to the doctors that saw him after that.
And in the new Bob Lazar documentary, they throw their phones far away, and they start talking about element 115 and whether Bob still has any of this stuff that he was able to sneak out of Area 51. And the very next day, his lab gets raided by
FBI,
CIA,
yeah,
and everybody else.
Yeah, he's been through a lot of crap.
Yeah, and obviously, to me, my personal
now that's a smart guy. Bob Lazar is a smart guy.
Yeah, my personal opinion is he's definitely telling the truth, and he did work on this craft. And for people to think otherwise is pretty far fetched to me. I think whether they were crashed alien ships or not, Bob Lazar doesn't have enough information about where they got these things from for him to know that. But it pretty much, I would bet on it that he was.
Well, they had something, and I have a question. I want to, just a quick question. I want to.
They could have been, there's all these, theories. They could have been under Earth. For me, these creatures and these aliens. One of our listeners thinks they live on the moon. Another thinks they live in inner Earth, up in Antarctica or the North Pole. There's entrances.
Could be.
You never know. I like the idea that the moon is a spaceship, and they've been tinkering with DNA for a long time from up there. And I'm really interested to see what happens when we get back to the moon. But sorry, I'm getting off track. Go ahead, Tyson.
If we de-engineer a thought experiment here for a second, imagine that the entire human race had 4 senses. Let's say that we didn't have eyes. We never had eyes, optical orbs. We never could see light. Okay, take that for a second. Today, would we have airplanes, spaceships, electronics, computers? Just that one sense. Take that one sense of sight away. Would we have any of the technology we have today?
No.
And the answer is probably no. Well, what if there are creatures out there that don't have 5 senses? Let's say they have 6 or 7. And I'm not talking about ESP or telekinesis or any of that. I'm talking about a biological sense, another way to view or realize the universe. If you have more of these senses, you have more of a holistic understanding in the nature of reality. Maybe they can harness it. We see, we see molecules popping into existence and popping out. But if you were a 2-dimensional creature on a flat plane and a spheroid were to drop through, all you would see is a circle growing and closing, right? You wouldn't see the spheroid because you're incapable of that. So what are we not what is in reality that we are not capable biologically?
I actually love this story. Tyson tells this story every freaking show that we do. But I do love this story because what if we're limited by 5 senses, which is, we're monkeys running around, with 5 senses. What if we had 20? What if we had 30? And what if there are creatures out there in the cosmos that have many, many more? We're limited to what our reality is, are limited to those 5 senses. He makes this not joke, but he makes he tells a story about an amoeba with 1 sense that can only touch and what its experience must be like. So I think and Tyson thinks with 5 senses, what can we possibly know about the universe?
And we think that's it. That what we have and what we know is it. This is it. This is it.
Yeah.
It's everything. And so we use that to define. Oh, you can't go faster than light. You can't do this. You can't do that. I believe that we're all made of dying stars. We're the supernova material out of a supernova is what made my body. And the universe abounds with these chemicals, these elements. There has to be life out there. It's almost impossible that there's not.
It's impossible, not almost.
It's impossible that there's not life out there. And if it's more evolved, if it has these, more of a grasp on the nature of reality, it can do some things that we might not think or, physics say we can't do, but they may just be able to pop in and out. I'm not even sure that I would know the difference between an ET or a ghost.
Okay.
Do we really?
That's what's cool about this guest tonight, right? she's had this experience, and she's open to this idea that is actually becoming a roundabout idea for a lot of scientists and people studying the subject, that the paranormal and aliens and demons and things like that may all be connected in some way, shape,
Right.
or form.
And that's something that came out when we finally, one of our team members tracked down one of the witnesses, one of Clay's witnesses, and he was saying he believes all of the things that happened out there at the airport were different manifestations of demonic energies, demonic forces. So that's a whole other thing. And, you know, Clay saw multiple aliens. And I don't know that we mentioned this, and it's pretty important, but at one point he ends up shooting and burying an alien. So that's part of what my team is working on now, to go find it.
All right. So when Clay shot this alien and buried it, did he tell you where it was?
Yes.
And have you dug?
No, because when one of the times we were out there interviewing him, he told my husband, you know, I might have booby trapped it. And my husband said, oh, okay. And if you did, what would you have used? Oh, hand grenades. So now,
tiny detail, yeah, a little detail,
minor detail. So we don't want anybody going out there. That's why the name of the airport is disguised. That's why all the people's names are disguised, the location, because we don't want somebody going out there digging holes, you know, around half the county.
But do you have an idea where the burial site is?
I do. And we've got a team of remote viewers that are trying to help us close in on that specific location too. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, we're having a lot of fun. But so
what are you going to do in the end when you find the spot that you want to dig? Robots?
Well, GPR, ground penetrating radar, right? You want to go over it.
We've got GPR technology. We've got metal detectors, obviously. We've got a bomb tech who has like multiple years with the military. We've got bomb sniffing dogs that are going to come out. So we don't want to take any chances. I mean, the thing is, you know, once we locate, you know, this is the place. Has all the hallmarks of what Clay said he put down there. That's when the bomb tech takes over. I mean, he's going to be the one that calls all the shots about how we get it out. I mean, he's seen so many like IEDs and things, and he knows that the bomb is always under the thing you want. So you know.
Tell me more about what Clay saw. He said,
okay, so
there's notes in there that he saw aliens in his office. Like, what did he see?
So there's a progression with the aliens to get to the point where he shoots them. So one night he's talking to his sister. It's 3:00 in the morning. He can't sleep. His sister's working in China. So it's the middle of the day for her. So he calls her up to catch up and to kind of tell her what's going on. And so while he's talking to her on the phone, he's just casually walking around his apartment, and he opens the door. The configuration was the hangar, office, and apartment. So the office was sandwiched between the hangar and this little apartment he had built for him and his wife while they were building a new house on some land they owned nearby. And so, you know, he's wandering around while he's talking on the phone, and he goes to the door that goes into his office, and just not even thinking, he just opens it up. And on his left, he sees these two little typical gray aliens. And he said, the weirdest thing about them, they were about 3.5, 4 feet tall. The weirdest thing about them was that when he kind of stepped in, he partially stepped through the door, and these two aliens moved out of the way together, like they were a gate. You know, it was like they were joined, and there was a hinge on one of them. And yeah. And so for me, the skeptic, that's a detail that I can't imagine. It's not in any of the lore, you know, the UFO alien lore. And who would make that up? you know.
Well,
so
were they
so
wearing
that
any
was on
kind
the
of
left, and
garment
on the
or
right,
any kind of garment or breathing
Yeah, what did he
device, or
say
can
about
they
that?
he
just
said they were
breathe our
dressed in.
atmosphere?
He said they. I'm sorry. I think we've got a delay somewhere.
No, you're
There we
good.
go.
You're good.
Yeah, you're fine.
They were dressed
Uh-oh.
in.
Are you there?
They were dressed in what?
Oh,
Did your internet cut out? Can you hear us?
okay. They had, yeah, yeah. They were in these silver outfits, and he said, and they were wearing boots that he said look like ropers. So if you're a Texan, they're just plain vanilla work boots. And he said they look like ropers spray painted silver. So that's the two little grays. But he looked on his right, and there was this tall guy, and he was tan and naked, but he said he said it had no genitals. It had no physical features. It was blank.
I think
like
you
a
mean
Ken
genitals.
doll.
Genitalia.
I'm a Gentile.
I'm a
Yeah,
Gentile.
I know.
What do you mean it had no
But-
Gentiles?
I know. That's what he said. He said it had no
I'm kidding.
Gentiles. So, but it had this huge head and bulging big eyes. And he said that it was like the eyes were too big for the sockets. And then the lids closed top and bottom. And he said the back of the head had these two big lobes. And he said, when I looked at this guy, I knew that he was like the bodyguard for the two little guys. And he said, and he was kind of scary. I mean, the whole thing was scary, but he said, then the big guy took a step toward him and he said, I don't know what happened. He said, I just backed out, closed the door, dropped the phone, and, didn't open the door for, I don't know, till next morning or whatever. Talking to his sister, she said, yeah, he said, gotta go, hung up. So that was
Have
the
you
first.
interviewed the brothers and the sisters about any kind of like bipolar or schizophrenia or anything going on in this guy?
And not that, yeah, I mean, I've talked to his sister, I've talked to his mom. I haven't heard any of, any signs that he had any mental deficiencies. In fact, they say that he was, extraordinarily clever. He was kind of inventive. He had developed these inventions. And in fact, he was telling me that he was about to close a deal right before he died, which your audience didn't know about until I just now said that, he was about to close this deal on licensing and invention. So he was very smart, very clever.
What kind of invention?
It was for a.
Can I say free energy device?
No. It was not sophisticated at all. It was a shovel that vibrated, had two plates, I guess, on it that vibrated, so that you could it would kind of cut through the dirt.
Go into the dirt. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think he had some other inventions, but he was just very creative and very clever. He was not a genius with computers. That was not his thing. Gears and motors and, physical things, he was brilliant with.
And was this a smaller airport or an international?
This was no. This was a little bitty airport. There was nobody there at night. I was shocked at how small it was when we first saw it. That there were, there's no fuel trucks. There's no tower. There's nothing.
Yeah, okay. I've been to these. My father flew Cessnas and Blancas and smaller.
Yeah, that's exactly
around the country. So
Yeah.
Smaller airport. So tell me what happened when he decided to shoot one of them.
Okay, so before that, what led up to shooting one of them, there was a gray alien in the hangar, and because he was scared, and events kind of ramped up that made him more and more scared, he was carrying guns with him all the time. Now, we're in Texas, we do that anyway, but this was more than usual. You may have experienced that in Idaho. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very normal.
I'm a big gun fan, so
yeah, me too. So I don't like them. but
I
like having them.
I like having them in case. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, and I have some guns, and I
believe
have,
in the Second Amendment and all that.
Yes,
but let's push
absolutely.
on through. So what
Absolutely.
happened to
So that
to lead up to
one
the
night
shooting?
there, yeah. So he's in the hangar one night, and his secretary, it was after hours, wasn't that late, and his secretary's finishing up to leave, and they see what they thought was a little kid in the hangar, and they're thinking, it's the middle of winter, and they're thinking, oh my God, we're out in the middle of nowhere. How could a kid be that lost that they're in our hangar? And when they finally, so at first the secretary's going, she's talking like this is a little kid. Come on, sweetie, it's okay. We got to find your mom or your dad, or where do you live? Blah, blah, blah. And then the thing moves, and they see that it's a gray alien. And so Clay pulls a gun, and this thing powers up this blue beam that comes out of his chest plate. And it's about 4 inches in diameter, this beam thing, and it cuts through everything in its path. It cuts through like part of an airplane, part of a scaffolding, and it cuts a hole in the outside of the hangar. Wow. I mean, this is corrugated steel, and it cuts a hole clean through it. And so now he knows. Before, he didn't know whether or not they could hurt him. Now he knows they could and potentially would. And my question is why this thing missed. That's a pretty big bullet, a 4-inch diameter beam. You would think that he would have been able to get Clay if he wanted to hurt him. So, I have some confusion about that. But anyway, Clay now knows that they're dangerous, potentially dangerous. And so now his fear is amped up. So when he sees another alien in the shop, and it's another gray, like the one that had the beam, he shoots it and he kills it.
Wow. So
now he's looking at this thing and he's thinking, oh my God, what do I do with this? And he told me, he said, if you had told me 5 years ago that I would have an alien body and not, go load it in the bed of my truck and take it to Oprah and to CNN and every media outlet in the world, I would have said you're crazy. But in this moment, he felt like, first of all, I find out later, much later, that he felt like a murderer. He had this love-hate relationship with aliens where he wanted to know what they knew, kind of like what you guys were talking about earlier, these mysterious things and what ifs, and he wanted to know what they knew. But at the same time, he was scared. And so he felt so bad, and he's like, oh my God, I need time. So he wraps it up in 2 layers of black plastic, puts it in a box, and he takes it to his cousin's restaurant and puts it in their walk-in freezer.
Oh my God.
And he told his cousin that it was like a feral pig. We have these wild pigs here in Texas. And he said, I shot this pig and I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with it. Would you mind hanging on to it? So that's how we got to the buried alien. Eventually he went back to the cousin's restaurant, took the thing back and said, I've got to do right by this.
And he buried it on the property somewhere?
He buried it near the airport.
Okay.
So I one of the questions that leaps out to me, just a natural question, is that if this entity on Earth shot and killed and put in a freezer, that there must be other aliens that are expecting him to report back or come home or whatever. And wouldn't they have mounted a search?
No, the Greys are just robots. They don't.
That's the other question is,
they don't care.
If it was a biologic, I think after shooting it, there would be fluids or other things that would show that it was a biological entity and not a robot, right?
Right. Now, he actually shot one before that. And it started to outgas and bleed something that etched the concrete. and he and his guys left the hangar because they were afraid that it was toxic. And when they came back, the thing was gone. So, he's thinking, maybe the alien paramedics came to get it. And so, to your point, I'm thinking one possibility, and then to relate to Star Trek, Manu, is that could the body have been beamed up? Are we going to find the box that it was buried in and not find the body because they, beamed it up?
Well,
so
it seems like they're able to beam their ships far distances. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to beam their
yeah.
boats.
So I don't know what to expect. We've got a guy who is our exobiologist. He's a biophysicist. We don't know if anybody's qualified to be
Did Clay
an
tell
exobiologist.
you or anyone else exactly where it was?
He gave me directions.
Okay.
Yes.
And then when Jim was coming out to Texas to excavate the site, Jim is your brother?
Yes, Jim is my brother.
And he was going to go excavate this site, and he had a heart attack
right before he was to come out to Texas.
And
yes.
What do you mean right before? Like days before? A day before?
It was like a couple of weeks before. I mean, he was planning on just doing a small crew instead of a full crew. He was going to bring his own camera and a couple of other cameramen and just come out and interview Clay. And he had been trying to get permission to film at the airport from the commissioners, and they kept dragging their feet and saying, well, we'll talk about that at the next meeting. And the meeting wasn't for another 3 weeks or 2 months or something. And then they'd have the next meeting, and then we didn't get to that question.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but as a filmmaker, that seems crazy to me. That any airport would stop me from bringing a camera on the site. To me, that would be.
And there's the permission is easier, or forgiveness is easier to get than permission philosophy, which I
but
believe
still,
in.
I get permits all the time, and if I want to shoot it at an airport, it wouldn't take me more than a week or two at the most.
Yeah, and that. So he was just going to say, well, the heck with that. I'm going to come out. I mean, you can come out to that airport without permission. I mean, it's a public. Airport.
It's a public airport, right? So do you wonder if your brother's death had anything to do with it?
No, and a lot of the people on his team, there were a lot of conspiracy theories around this. This was an example of, please, people, take care of yourselves. He had AFib, atrial fibrillation, and they were saying that, okay, we can fix this by killing part of your heart. Some of your heart muscles not working right, so we can stop the AFib by killing that part of your heart that's not working. Well, that's a scary prospect for anybody. So my brother said he found a way that you can solve that by taking some amino acids, and he did that, and he got rid of the AFib. What he didn't tell me, and I didn't find out until after he died, was that when he went to the cardiologist, they also saw evidence that he had some smaller heart attacks, and he was supposed to go in for tests to find out what was the problem. And he promised his wife, as soon as I get back from Texas, I'll go to the doctor, and the rest is history. So
where do you guys live?
Where does Jim was in Connecticut.
Connecticut, and he was going to make it to Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how much later does Clay die?
About a year later, a little over a year and 2 months later.
Now, Clay's condition very different, right? He had flesh-eating bacteria. He had things that are not what a typical person might die of.
Right, and so my job, to me, as a skeptic, trying to say, are there any conventional explanations for what you thought you saw, what you reported that happened to you? So I'm like, okay, there was an oil rig that had drilled, I guess it was an exploratory drilling rig on the airport grounds. And I'm thinking, okay, they pulled it out after 6 months, I guess because they didn't find anything. So I'm thinking, could they have tapped into a pocket of gas or some kind of toxic
Kind of
something that could cause hallucinations? It doesn't explain everything, but I'm looking for explanations. But now throughout this so Clay was fine at this airport until 2010. And in 2010, so the drilling rig was 2009, 2010, all this started. But it doesn't really explain what happened to him. And his health went downhill partly because of what his wife was doing to him. And it was as if she was becoming possessed. So she started out really nice and sweet and, thoughtful and normal. And over once we got into 2010 and this craziness started, her behavior started to turn dark, and she would start to swear and weird things. Like one morning she woke up and her belly was like she was 8 months pregnant overnight. And Clay's freaking out because he's like, he's thinking, what, like a spider, can a spider do this? A spider bite or a snake bite, or what can do this?
Did you see this?
Yes.
Did you see this transformation?
No. But she just woke up with it, and he's trying to get her to the hospital because he's thinking it can't be good. And she's fighting him. She finally ends up kicking him in the head. He falls. He's knocked out. And then when he wakes up, she's gone. And when she comes back several hours later, the bump on her belly is gone. But he said that morning he caught her eating raw meat out of the fridge. And he thought, this is really kind of weird.
Yeah,
and
that's weird.
So, and then there was another occasion where he took her out to dinner. They had a fight. The two of them had to go separate ways, so they had both vehicles out in the parking lot. So he goes out to the parking lot and is trying to talk her through this, issue that they had argued about. And she's in her truck, and he's holding her truck door, and she slams the door with his hand in it and drags him like 1.5 miles on a rough road. And he ends up with broken ribs, and I think he broke both arms and one leg, and he had lacerations all over him.
Like dragged her with her hand, like dragged, or in a car.
The car door shut, and
okay,
with him stuck in the car.
Yeah, and then finally she opened the car door and let him go, but he ended up in the hospital, obviously, and in a wheelchair for a while. The bonesman.
Were the police involved with something like this? I would assume.
Not on that one. But then the thing that finally got him to divorce her was when he had told her before this. He said for whatever reason the airport is affecting you the most. Now the other crew would get moody when they got to the airport, but she was the one that seemed to be getting the worst. So he said, you really need to be away from the airport. So he asked her to go move in with her sister for a while. He was, yes. But then she shows up in the middle of the day with his .38 revolver and starts taking pot shots at everybody in the hangar. And she didn't hit anybody, but she did get arrested. She went to jail, and he got her out. I don't know how you do that. I mean, if I would think
that's love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And his mom is like, there was nothing you could say that would make him, not defend her and not give her the benefit of the doubt. But it wasn't even the shooting that made him divorce her. It was when he found out that she had all these drugs, including meth. But she had meth in a pocket of her scrub. She was a pharmacy nurse. And but she had this packet of other people's medicines in her truck when the police arrested her. So that was it for Clay. It was, shooting, dragging, that wasn't bad
drug
enough.
Addiction and
but
illegal
it was
activities, and he finally let her go. But then how many years later does he get the flesh-eating bacteria, etc.?
Well, let's see. He moved out. He finally left there in 2013, and he died in 2016.
And the things in the airport happened from the time he got there in 2010 all the way till
No, he had been there long before 2010, and nothing happened. He saw nothing. Nothing
So
weird had happened.
When did the weirdness start?
2010.
2010.
Yeah,
That's
so
when all the
Okay. What about
Yeah.
the people that are there now? Are you talking to the people that work there now?
we have started talking to them. We're kind of easing into it, into the subject. So we haven't really gotten into hard questions about, have they experienced anything? So, I mean,
Speaking
the
of hard
investigation.
we got a lot of callers that want to talk to you at the 1 hour mark.
Sorry, I know we've got callers. But I'm gonna have to cut the show short. Let's take the first three, and I'll let Miss. We'll bring her back if you'd like to come back.
I would love to, because we've got more investigation going on.
And honestly, like I'm in the middle of I'm a producer. I produce movies and music and,
Awesome.
and YouTube shows and etc. And my work from Star Trek. But we're hoping to get a bigger budget for Dangerous Thoughts. So when we come up with these interesting stories and we find people like you, that we can come visit. I would
awesome.
I would love to come visit and take a
that would be so cool.
Something like this. So hopefully we can get that done in the next few weeks. But where were we? I just
callers.
A couple of callers, yeah.
Callers.
Go.
Yeah.
All right. Up first, we have Dave Prime, and then we have Zach.
Dave Prime, you
and
better have
Chris.
a good question, or I will kick your ass.
I think I have a good question for you, Pat. Seeing
I did.
it's been on the internet, and it's a common belief that, like, the connection of UFO activity around nuclear power plants. I grew up in the Northwest, so Hanford is literally just right down the road from me. So I'm just like, what are your thoughts on
or nuclear power missile facilities, etc.?
Yeah, Hanford
what are your thoughts of,
Hanford was weapons material.
Yeah.
And I worked in nuclear power, which is a little bit different, but yeah. As far as the aliens' interest in nuclear power, I'm not quite sure why, unless it's they seem to be, from what I've read and from what I've seen, they seem to be more interested in like the nuclear missile silos and things like that, rather than the power plants. But there have been some sightings around the power plants.
Pat, have you seen that the Chernobyl and the Russian government has declassified that 15 minutes after Chernobyl blew up, they saw a UFO buzz Chernobyl? And
did not see it. But you know what? It's kind of like what Tyson was talking about earlier. It's like sometimes there's a conventional explanation, and for Chernobyl, their reactor used a flammable moderator. So they use graphite, which is the stuff like is in pencil. That stuff burns. In our reactors here in the States, we use water. Water does not burn. So, there's a basic flaw in the design that Chernobyl used, not to mention a lot of incompetence and, no containment. We've got containment buildings and things like that with, rebar that's 2 inches in diameter and concrete that's 12 inches thick and things like that. So you could probably drive a plane into it, and the plane's going to suffer, but the building won't.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not sure I answered your question though.
Well, he was asking about Dave. You were asking about whether aliens or
just the higher activity versus like middle of Texas, where there's like just farmland, versus like you got a big old nuclear facility, just like in
You know, I know as many people with sightings in that farmland. I mean, one of the members of our team saw a huge ship. I am so envious of her. She had a ranch, and she had horses, and she was late feeding them, so it was after dark, and she was coming out, and there was this huge rectangular craft hanging over her head, and it was no higher. She said it wasn't even as high as a normal telephone pole. It was as high as the lower kind of telephone pole that brings the service into your house. And it was huge. She said it was, like the size of a motorhome over her head. And it was completely silent. That's the kind of thing. And that's the most extreme.
Tic Tac or Black Triangle?
No. This was a triangle. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember the Stephenville sightings, but the Stephenville, Texas, it was this huge 1/2 mile wide by 1 mile long rectangle overhead. Hers was not that big, but still, I mean, if you saw a motorhome over your head floating, that's pretty impressive. And, so, like I said, I've heard more stories about things that are happening out in the boonies. I was at a conference last summer, and some people came up and said, we've got 40 acres or something, and we've been having these blue lights running around. And
I live in a very rural area, and that scares me because you never hear of this. Hey, I was on the 64th floor of my condo, and and it's like never in the city, right? It's always I was out in the field with the cows.
In New York that have had these experiences, but mostly they do show up in rural areas. Yeah, I mean, I was in a rural area in Idaho when I had my experiences as a kid. And also, by the way, if we do get the invitation to come out, Dangerous Thoughts will be very low key, and we won't ruin your story.
Awesome.
Awesome. Just run a camera and see if we can capture anything, and
that would be phenomenal
instead of you on our team. I'm so fascinated by this subject. I'm just like you. I don't think I'm a skeptic because but I'm not. I'm not a full believer either. I don't know what's going on. I just know that it's super interesting, and I know the history of Project Blue Book, and I know the history of the UAP UFO phenomenon. And I actually had an astronaut, a very famous astronaut, super famous astronaut, tell me that aliens were real and they were following us and watching us.
Wow.
And that was from Star Trek. It was a Star Trek dinner. It was actually Buzz Aldrin that told me that.
Oh my God, that is so cool.
Yeah, okay. So let's take 2 more callers. And
we only have 1 more. I think.
Good. Well, okay, I kicked him off.
I just had one thing just to add to really super quick. I won't do the whole full story, but like about 50 miles west of Hanford, when I was driving in Eastern Washington, I saw a UFO that looked like a metallic walnut. Just like the top half of a walnut.
That's interesting. That kind of reminds me of the Kecksburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, very much. Like
craft.
What was it? Looked like
like an acorn.
An acorn, yeah.
Yeah.
And the bottom half, it was just like 2 little pastel colored something or other, just like those, like the pastel chocolate covered walnuts you get around Easter time.
All right, wait a second, Pat. There's a little note here in your talking points, and it says something about what Clay's mother told you. What's the story there?
Well, there, and I believe I was telling you guys before the show started, but one of the things she told me is that when he was a kid, they went on a road trip from Texas to Alaska, and they had a travel trailer they were pulling behind their truck. And one night when they were coming back from Alaska, they pulled over to the side of the road for the night because they were too tired to drive on, and so just found a wide spot in the road and went to sleep. And in the middle of the night, his mom woke up, and Clay was, I think, 5, and his sister might have been 3. They were very young. But his mom woke up in the middle of the night. She was hearing this clicking sound coming from outside the trailer. And she said it sounded, she said it sounded like a conversation. So there was a clicking over here and then a clicking over here. And like they were talking back and forth in this clicking noise. And she swore that it was aliens. And she believed that Clay may have been abducted that night, if not all of them. And she said, I knew nothing about aliens. It was not a thing back in those days. I mean, I think it might have been, you know, Betty and Barney Hill might have been, they might have heard about that, but it was not, it was not well known at all. And so when I had her on the phone and she was telling me about this, I said, you know what? There was this weird sound on my brother's sizzle reel. And Monty, you know what that is. It's like a preview that you make of your video or your movie or your TV show that you want to take to investors to show them kind of, this is what kind of stuff we're going to be producing on our show. And on the sizzle reel, they were out, and it might have been on a runway. I'm not quite sure where they were, but they got this weird interference on their camera. And I have never heard that. I've heard a lot of kind of interference, you know, RF or, you know, all kinds of radio interference, but I've never heard this kind of sound. So I played it for her. I pulled up the sizzle reel, which is on my brother's website, which is experiencers.com, by the way, just X at the beginning. And this, so it's on my brother, the memorial to my brother is the sizzle reel. And so I played it for her and she said, yes, that sounds very similar. And so I don't know what that was. And Clay always denied that he had been abducted, but he was open to the possibility that maybe he was, and he just didn't remember it. And he was willing to do hypnotic regression to find out. But he had experiences that had all the hallmarks of abduction, where he would wake up outside of his apartment in different clothes that didn't belong to him. And the doors were locked,
not knowing
from
how
the inside.
There, not knowing what day it was.
Yeah. But so, I don't know what was, but anyway, so he may have had a relationship with the aliens from the time he was a child.
Very possible. Very possible.
Yeah.
It's something that I always wonder about, because I know that I had experiences with interdimensionals, aliens, demons, angels, whatever you want to call them. I don't know yet. I just find all this stuff absolutely fascinating. If you haven't seen Encounters or Steven Spielberg's new one on Netflix, just great stuff. And the governments of the world are coming forward more with all of our military seeing things that they don't understand, and no one knowing where these technologies are coming from, except for possibly the dark ops, badass black ops people that actually do know where they're coming from. I'm just jealous because I'm not part of the club. I'm just an actor.
I know, that's the way I feel.
Yeah,
I want my own thing. But see, you've had experiences. Yeah. I'm envious of you.
At least I've had experiences, sure. But they're from when I was 5, 6, 7.
Have you had hypnotic regression to see if you could get any more information?
I've had hypnotic regression on a ghost experience that I had when I was very young, and the hypnotic regression that I went through with this psychiatrist, it was like 4 sessions, and I came out of it more confused than I went in. And so it sort of ruined the hypnotic regression idea for me, because I started having all these different memories that conflicted. You know what I mean? And I was like, but I'm not closed-minded enough not to try it again. But the particular person that I worked with, I just came out of them knowing less than I did when I started, and
Yeah, somebody really needs to be good at facilitating that and not planting other ideas or kind of begging your subconscious to, make things up.
Yeah.
If I could, as we get our last caller on, can you tell me again the name of your book and where we can find it? Because I got my pen and paper. I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
It's called Bleed Through: A True Story of Aliens, Demons, and Pure Evil in Texas. And we're working. It's on. We've got paperback, ebook, and right now on Amazon, and we're working on the audiobook now.
Okay, so we can grab it off Amazon. Anywhere else you want us to go besides what's your website called again?
The website experiencers.com with just an X at the beginning, and there's some of Clay's photos are there. There's some information that my brother's, the little memorial video I did for my brother is on there, and that's actually got the sizzle reel in it if you want to hear that clicking noise, that interference that was on their cameras. So
it sounds like as far as alien lore goes, it sounds like the insectoids.
It does, yeah.
But it could have been greys too, because greys have those supposedly little fluttery mouths that make noises. But it sounds.
And we don't know. Yeah, I mean, we don't know if maybe they're communicating using some kind of frequency that interferes with the transmissions, that the mics are using to pick up and communicate. So we don't know. We don't know. There's so much we don't know.
Yeah, there is. The only thing I do know is that people like Bob Lazar and many others seem very credible to me.
Absolutely,
I've had
agree.
experiences, and there's so many experiences in UFO lore now, from Fire in the Sky with Walton and
right.
You can go on and on. Betty and Barney Hill and
Whitley.
Whitley. It runs the gamut. And so many new stuff these days with the cell phone cameras that are picking up these amazing things. I don't know if you saw the lights over Fukushima 15 minutes after Fukushima blew up.
Right.
But there's these dancing lights over Fukushima that not only the government caught, but people caught, and one person that was working on the ground at the Fukushima site trying to get things solved, put his camera up and caught a piece of.
Well, but at Fukushima, they had an earthquake and a tsunami, and there's a thing called earthquake lights that are theorized. Nobody's really proven it, but it's not really fringe science right now. It's kind of halfway respectable, but it's like the piezoelectric effect in the ground where the quartz crystals kind of pressing on, it's being compressed by whatever is happening in that earthquake where the tectonic pressures are pushing on it. Theoretically, it can create this plasma that can then glow, and that can cause the light. So something like that might be a natural phenomenon around something like Fukushima with the earthquake that happened there. I don't know.
I love how your skeptic mind works. These lights in Fukushima they were over the plant, and they did such amazing formations, and they rotated and darted in between each other, and then they became this one ball of light that shot up into the sky, and quartz crystals beneath the earth. It just sounds like swamp gas to me. And I've heard the swamp gas explanation for the Marfa lights here in Texas, and I'm like, have you ever been to Texas? Yeah. There's no swamp here in Texas. Yeah. One time in Montana, I was standing out at a rainbow gathering, and I wasn't on any drugs or narcotics, and I have experienced drugs and LSD and all that stuff. But I was 11 years old, and I was staring out at the top of these peaks, and I could see these stars that were dancing in between each other, and they were sort of rotating in like what is it called, a infinity formation, where they were kind of making that infinity loop. and they did other little things, and they did it for about 20 minutes, and then they vanished. And I was like, what does that? 11 years old. I didn't know.
And we didn't have drones then, so it couldn't have been drones.
No, it couldn't have been drones. It couldn't have been jets dropping drones.
And I agree. That couldn't have been Earth lights either, because it's too far away from the ground.
It was so strange. And I've had aliens crawl over myself when I was 5 years old, but the memory is so old that I can't trust it. I'm 46, and when you're 5 years old and those memories from back then, it's another lifetime. Just doesn't seem real.
Yeah.
This has been a beautiful conversation. Oh, we have one more caller. I'm sorry. we were going to skip our last caller.
Chris Leftwich.
What's up? How is everyone?
I'm good, Chris.
Oh, this has been
what a good story, huh? What's the name of your book again?
Bleed Through: A True Story of Aliens, Demons, and Pure Evil in Texas.
Okay, now wait a second. Before Chris starts, where does the pure evil and where does the idea that this could possibly be demonic or spiritual in nature come from?
He actually saw what looked like a devil coming out of the ground. He said it was pushing it was red and slick and seemed to be pushing its hoofs or whatever, pushing itself out of the ground. And there was another night in his apartment, he saw this blue plasma angel. He said it was like, he called it an angel. He didn't, really know what it was, but it was like this plasma blue undulating form. And he said, then there was this other darker form that came up from the ground. And he said he got the impression that it was a demon or a devil. And there was this kind of seduction or, abuse kind of scenario that it was acting out. And then the angel figure seemed to, overtake the darker figure. And then they both disappeared. He became very religious throughout all this experience. And so I think as time went on, he started attributing some more of this stuff to those kinds of forces, demonic forces, and that sort of thing.
How many interviews with him and how much time did you spend with him to write the book?
Oh gosh. Well, I was communicating with him every day, almost every day for probably a year and a half, either through emails or on the phone. And then we went out there three times where we spent like 2 days each with him out at the airport. And we spent one night on the airport, just my husband and I, hoping that we'd see something. And then, as I was telling you guys before the show, I went out there one night by myself because one woman told me that she said, I won't see them because I'm too cocky, because I believe they don't exist and I'm not afraid of them.
The skepticism keeps them away.
So she was basically saying you had to be afraid. If you fear them, they'll come, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that. I mean, it kind of processed in my brain for a long time, thinking I'll try anything. So, that's when I stayed out on the airport all by myself overnight, and nothing happened, but I tried to make myself scared. I mean, I would have been scared.
Stay another night. Dangerous Thoughts is coming out there. We'll stay a week. We'll stay until we see something.
There you go. Yeah.
Leftwich. Hit up Pat O'Connell. I'll be right back. I'm old.
Old whatever. Pat, oh my God, I could talk to you like all day long. Real quick, Dangerous Thoughts. Everybody here knows this story. I'm going to tell. I've been abducted. It started when I was 3 years. I have scars. I have scars, and I also have this thing right here in my pinky that popped up like just, I don't know, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. And you can actually snag your nail on it. And yeah, it's right.
Is it something that could be removed?
I don't know. If you can see it, it's right there.
Yeah, I can see a little shiny bump.
Yeah. And you can snag your nail on this thing. One night,
wow.
it wasn't there. I woke up the next morning. I'm taking a shower. It's there. And sometimes it gets hot. Sometimes it'll start itching really bad, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. I was 3 years old. My dad was a DoD contractor. He was a master instructor for the United States Air Force. He worked at Chanute Air Force Base, Rantoul, Illinois. I was born in 1973, so this was like 76. And it was Christmas time. And my grandma was downstairs, babysitting me. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was asleep. And I just woke up. Bam. Woke up out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, cool. What am I going to do now? So I decided to walk over to the window. And I looked out the window, and I called it a giant Tylenol, which is what's known now as Tic Tac. But I called it a giant Tylenol. It was about the size of a Greyhound, and it was like 50 to 75 feet from me. It wasn't far at all. And it sat there, it didn't wobble. It didn't make a sound. It was just there. And I sat there and I looked at it and I was like, oh, cool. The aliens, man, they're here. All right. Hey, what's up, guys? And, I could empathically communicate with them, and everything was cool. And they told me that they were my watchers. There were 7 of them on this craft. And then I saw these tiny little, what looked like lights, but they weren't lights, they were windows. And I never saw them, not physically saw them, but they were communicating with me. And and that was it. And then, it went down into this, silverish, mattish, grayish, blackish. It could chameleon itself and all. And then it just started moving, and I was like, hey, what the fuck, man? What you're going to come down here and visit me, and then you're just going to leave me here? Oh, hell no. No, I ain't having this. And I was pissed off, and I ran downstairs and told my grandma.
How old were you?
I was 3.
You were 3.
3 years old.
Wow.
And my grandma, she blew it off. My dad, when my parents got home the next morning, she told them, I told them, and my dad blew it off, and my mom, she believed me. And that's when, keep in mind, I'm 3 years old, and she found the scar right here on the fatty part of my right knee. And it's still there. Wow. It was very prominent back then. And
was it a scoop mark?
No, it's just a scar, just a flat
scar.
Just a scar. That's it. And it goes through the fleshy part of my knee. It's probably about 2 inches long.
Ooh,
and then
wow.
And then also on the night of the Phoenix Lights, which was March 13th, 17th, 15th, somewhere in there, 97. I have 2 dots on my upper right arm directly over a vein that simply just popped up. Like, yeah. And
no, I'm blown away by and my girlfriend even thinks she has some kind of a tracking system in her. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's tracking system or not, but the thing is, they just popped up, and I was in the shower the next morning, and I looked at them, and I thought they were little pimples. So I just fucked with them, tried to squeeze them. I'm like, fuck that. And then like 3 months later, I noticed they're still there. So I took out my diamond loop and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh God, that's scar tissue. You fuckers. Yeah. And another thing I want to mention is I theorize that the UAPs, the UFOs, etc., they're not built like we build, like airplanes and cars and shit like that. I believe that they are genetically engineered, that they are actually grown. And that's what gives them the ability to shapeshift. That's what gives them, imagine having, let's say the giant Tylenol, something the size of a Greyhound bus, but the computer is a brain, and it's all genetic. And that's just bounce there. There's my question. I'm gonna bounce that off you.
Well,
Yeah,
that would
let
be
me add to the question, because this fascinates me too. As far as this new AI thing that's happening, for me, it's like, what if the AI had 500 million years more than we did in another galaxy, to take its DNA that it started as flesh, but then we had the computer revolution and we created the AI, and the AI got loose. Wouldn't it take that DNA that it started with and bring it to other planets? And Leftwich here that's talking to you, he thinks that it's possible that AI is some kind of AI alien is on the moon, and they're doing DNA, they're doing tests with what they originally were, which is DNA and what we all come
kind of a panspermia type theory.
Yeah. I believe that the moon is hollow. I believe that the aliens that are on the moon are, quote, what I just mentioned, the Watchers. They're the Greys. That's why they have those big giant eyes, because an eagle's eye is bullshit. That's why they have those big giant eyes, is so they can see, exactly. Well, now think about it. And I believe that they're clones, that they're just clones. That's all I know. They're not robots, right? I don't believe that they are the aliens that created the life on this planet and fucked with it all through, time.
They just
have manipulated DNA to become us. And we now are like them, especially with all our technology. And their level of technology, man, this shit we got with these smartphones and all this, you got the world in your pocket right here. This is bullshit compared to what
it's creepy. I spend 10 hours plus a day on it. Isn't that disgusting?
Like 10 minutes, man.
Yeah. Okay. So
you do it for business, though.
Before,
right? Well,
but
business doesn't count.
It's disgusting that I spend 10 hours of my life looking into this little thing and touching buttons.
Well, like Tyson said, it's business. That's a tax write-off, man. Pay yourself.
Ick. So, Pat, as a skeptic, I really, really like that you're looking into this in general. I love that you keep referring to yourself as a skeptic, but still looking deep into this strange phenomenon of UAPs. And
I want to have my own experience too. I mean, I'm envious of you guys.
Well, mine was when I was a kid, so I'm envious too. So let's go have our own.
Yes, we'll have our Skywatch parties out at the airport. And
as soon as we get a little
bring
better
me down
funding,
there. I'll do what I can.
I would love to come down there, and
that would be awesome.
We'll bring our small crew. We'll bring Tyson and Cassie, and we'll spend a week down there and see if we actually see something. And if
that
we
would
do,
be
then
fantastic.
Dig deeper. All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pat O'Connell. Pat, one more time, tell them www.xexperiencers.com. That's just the letter X, experiencers, PERIENCERS.com.
Link is in the description below.
The link is in the description
Thank you.
below. Yeah.
Thank you, disembodied voice.
Yeah, well, you can see him. He's down there in the lower left corner.
Oh, okay.
Cassie Rumor. Her book is called Bleed Through: A True Story of Aliens, Demons, and the Pure Evil in Texas, and about her experience with a man named Clay Wheeler. It sounds super interesting to me. You can get it on Amazon. Is there any other places you can order it directly?
No, that's it.
All right, cool. It was wonderful to meet you, and I hope we get to see each other more. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I scared the Dangerous Thoughts listeners, but we've already gone 38 minutes over time, and that is ridiculous. We cannot do that anymore. Thanks, Pat O'Connell. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Night.
Dude, you gonna take on the car?
Yeah.